I've taught a variety of levels of player over the years, and something interesting I've discovered is my students who play the Sicilian in the range of, let's say, 1200 and below, face a system again and again, which is statistically kind of unreal, the amount of times they face it. So we're talking about maybe 90% plus times they face it. So, and if you play the Sicilian against these lower rated players, this is the system you're going to face. It has two strategic flaws, and we're just going to simply look at that using Ricker's game here. These are his notes. And Ricker's a friend of the dojo. He submitted this game for us to review, and I'm going to use it to talk about the opening and the strategic flaws in it. Okay, so here we go. Bishop c4. Sometimes they play knight f3 first, but they're going to play bishop c4. And I think it's because psychologically they've learned, when they're learning chess, they were playing people who played e5, and there they learned to play knight f3, bishop c4. And so here they're going to do it. Now, the first problem with this setup is that, boom, you're going to get whacked with d5. And this whack is going to come at the loss of an important tempo. Some players in the Sicilian will play a6, b5, also very playable. I like e6, d5, precisely what Ricker does here. So knight f3, knight c6, we're going to talk about this a little bit. And then finally, d5. And the first strategic mistake is that you're going to give black a tempo by letting him whack you with d5. The next strategic mistake isn't forced, and we'll show you why not in a second, but I see it again and again at this level, and that is they take. Now, in this position, I don't think white has anything better but to take. But what I want to stress is they always do it. And why is this a problem? Because you free black's one poor piece here with the bishop on c8. And so, Ricker, a note to you, when you submit the games, I really encourage you to try to write down what you think the mistakes were in the game and to suggest better moves, right? Okay, so one thing I'll say is if you were going to do this horrible system, the thing that you should do after e6 is play d3, d5, bishop b3. And this is, I think, a playable system for white. It's a little bit weird, of course, but I do think it's a playable system. You can play knight c3 first as well. You know, maybe that's even a slightly better version if you wanted to do it like this. And then play, but before they get in d5, you want to play d3 yourself. Very critical, so that when this happens, you can drop back to b3 and not release the Kraken, the bishop on c8. Okay, so here we should probably play d5 first, and here white should play d3. Okay, so here we go. Beautiful tempo, and here we should criticize queen e2. He's just putting his queen on the same file as our rook is about to emerge on, right? I prefer knight f6 in castles, but this is fine. Bad move because he's helping fix our center here with bishop takes c6. Okay. Okay, a little tricky. Ricker's counting on the fact that queen e7 is met by rook e8. But it's still okay, he's developing. One thing Ricker's done well with in his chess is to follow my lead and develop. CD, CD, and a move now that I think is very ambitious and nice, knight e4. Good move, good move. We're freeing our pieces. We could have played h6 first, but this is nice. I like that Ricker's getting all his guys involved. White should probably take on d2, but instead goes back passive. Now, bishop b4, let's go ahead and say that can't be wrong. You could have also played bishop a3 to control c1, okay? But I think this is good. You have a nice trick with knight takes d2 intended. So now, queen d3, and here, Ricker, I think you're a little bit guilty of hope chess. And one of the things at this level, and I think, let me just say, actually for your own growth, I think is important, is to recognize that you don't want to play for tricks. So what is Ricker playing for when he plays this? He is playing for some kind of, bishop D. Bishop, he wants to land the bishop here on E2. Okay, so, right, bishop E2, forking the queen and rook. And instead, I think it's important to say that look at this beautiful knight. Let's not trade him off for this dog here. No, black is, and white isn't threatening anything either. So we have loads of good moves, like that really comes to mind. And it's unpleasant. It is very unpleasant for black, for white at that point. He can't take on E4. Okay, so again, Ricker, I encourage you to try to write down question marks and exclams here. It will help you figure out what you objectively think is going on in the position, as well as your evaluations. Now, here we get a bad move that is, again, a little bit involved with, I guess, what I would call hope chess. You are trying to do some kind of trickery with bishop f5. And the problem with this is your dark squares are starting to look kind of funky. So in this position, you're still better because you have the lead in development. You got the two bishops, right? But after this, I'm starting to wonder, right? Okay, A3, bishop f5, queen e2, and now a little bit of a chess crime here. You take, and what you do here is now, right, is you're stealing the pawn on b3. So the thing that you see is you say, oh, I get a pawn. And what I see is all of a sudden I'm really worried about these pieces here coming in and talking to the dark squares over here. And a good rule of thumb is that material is always important, but it's the least, can I say that? It's the least important when we have bishops of opposite color, which is what we have here. Why? Because if white gets an initiative on the dark squares, he's up a piece on those squares. So this is just terrifying to me. And of course, your opponent should probably put one of the rooks on c1, maybe think about bishop h6. But he blew it, and you correctly took that thing, Ricker, bam, and now you're winning the game. And, you know, I talk a lot of strategic blah blah on these videos, and you know, it's fun, it's interesting, probably the most interesting part of the game for me to think about. But I will say, as a teacher, it is moments like this where somebody hangs the piece. It's actually, well, like, that's where the game was actually decided, right? That's where the game was actually decided. So maybe as a general thing to say, you could say, well, there's 3 dimensions in chess: material, time, and quality of position. Time and quality of position are the hardest to learn, to understand, but material here is in a lot of ways the hardest to master, and also the cruelest, because now with rook fb1 snip, it's all over. So good game, Ricker. I'm enjoying your notes. I think your notes are getting better, and I think my wish for you next time is write down what you think are the mistakes and what you think you and your opponent should have done instead. All right, bye-bye.